do a little bit better than the last one. So for this planning effort, we called it Your Transportation Plan, and we really wanted to expand our in-person outreach and build it from the ground up. Really knowing that public and stakeholder involvement is key to any successful transportation plan. So in order for us to hear from new voices, we really made it a point to get out there, and we visited every county in Colorado, some more than once. We attended community events in every region of the state, including rodeos, county fairs, festivals, farmers markets, just with the aim of, really having one set of conversations around all modes of transportation, listening to people and hearing what was important to them. It seems like a dream thinking about last summer, being able to get out there. So I'm glad we got to travel the state last summer. It's very different from what we've been experiencing this summer. So we also had a lot of meetings, I'll say too, with stakeholder groups, and this included Pro 15. I think Tim was out meeting with you guys twice last summer, and your input was extremely valuable in informing the key needs and projects that we articulated in the statewide plan. So next slide. Perfect. So, all this public input really helped us to build our vision. We received thousands of comments that really collectively pointed to three compelling needs, which were improving the condition and safety of our roads, reducing congestion, and then providing more travel options. You'll notice that you can see it, road condition and safety, reducing congestion, and then also freight really rose to the top in the regions that encompass the Pro 15 counties. Next slide. So we used all the public and stakeholder involvement we received statewide and aligned it with projects that would address the needs articulated. So this led us to create a diversified project list that we sometimes refer to as a strategic pipeline of projects that focused on achieving 5 main things, which are shown in this slide. The first being improving our interstate. We've identified projects, both highway and transit, that would improve our interstates. The second category being relieving traffic, projects that would alleviate congestion in our urban areas. The third category is improving rural access statewide, so it includes projects that provide travel access within and between our rural communities. Next category is fixing our rural roads, so projects that improve the quality of our rural roads, something that's much needed. And then lastly, improving roadway system condition, and that includes highway or transit projects that will return our system to a state of good repair. So next slide. So how does this translate back to what we heard from you specifically? So like I said, in the summer of 2019, we met with you guys and we heard sort of these themes around safety, mobility, and asset management. We heard that, the semi-truck traffic on narrow two-lane roads is a huge safety issue, that we also have wide loads on narrow highways and there's a lack of passing lanes, and that we really need wider shoulders on many of our highways. In terms of mobility, we heard that farm-to-market roads are critical for food supply, and there's increased traffic from oil and gas, which slows down traffic and creates bottlenecks. For asset management, we have poor pavement condition, and that heavy equipment has increased stress on our roads. So for the 2045 plan, a lot of these themes relate to freight. So one of the things that I'll talk about is that we wanted to ensure that freight was front and center in the 2045 plan. We talk a lot about the freight corridors of statewide significance and how critical they are to getting Coloradans food and essential supplies. This, of course, I probably don't need to say it to this group, but you guys know that this has been even more vital this year as we deal with the coronavirus pandemic, and we're so reliant on freight. Another main focus we talk about in the plan is rural mobility options. We identified many projects at critical locations that would add passing lanes and improve intersections, particularly along corridors with high numbers of freight trucks. And this plan, really represents the largest investment in rural paving in recent history, and demonstrates CDOT's commitment to improving our crumbling rural roads in every corner of the state. So this slide here, I'll turn it over to Tim. He's going to talk a little bit more specifically about projects and funding considerations.
Thanks for that, Marissa. So I don't have a visual for you guys, so I'll just ask you, stay with me verbally here while I walk you through kind of the COVID-related impacts to budget and projects. So you heard Marissa refer to a little bit earlier kind of that 10-year strategic pipeline of projects, right? And so when we CDOT worked with you all to identify what projects should go into those lists, we collated all that information, and then we bifurcated the list into two pieces. The first piece was years 1 through 4, and we considered those first 4 years funded. And the primary predicate for why they were funded were these new additional sources of funding that had been coming to the department in recent years, things like Senate Bill 1, 262, and 267, and then the prospective opportunity to recapture 4 full years of Senate Bill 267. So that's why we looked at that piece as funded. Then the second half of that bifurcation was years 5 through 10, or the unfunded piece of that pipeline. We knew we had really great projects in there, but no way to pay for them, without realizing some either state or federal new funding source, right? So it's really important, to have that kind of basic distinction, before we go into the next piece I'm going to explain to you, because I really want to focus on just kind of that funded piece, that years 1 through 4. And as I mentioned, that was, we consider that funded largely because of the Senate Bill 267 commitments that we were planning to receive. Now, as we all know, the world changed, and revenues now are in jeopardy. And so because when we looked at that year 1 through 4 program, we didn't necessarily say, projects are going to go in these exact order, in this exact order. We knew that we wanted to deliver that entire portfolio, and, based on some level of readiness, pre-construction, activity completion, we would kind of move projects along as they were ready to go. Well, when the revenues get cut, you have to kind of, take a new look at prioritization and what moves when. And that's what myself and Rebecca and Shoshana have been talking with the Transportation Commission about over the last several months is, we have a set amount of money that we know we've received and we've programmed. And then we have to start to come up with a little bit of scenario planning around if we got certain levels of dollars, how would we program those dollars out and which projects would flow with them. So that's what we've been working on right now. We think we've got a really good plan in place with the Transportation Commission. If we were lucky enough to realize additional dollars, whether it be from federal or state. But I think the one main takeaway I'd like to give to you, Kathy, and your constituents is that we've got a plan. You helped us develop this plan, and we're sticking to it. We're, one of the really important things is that, when we all agreed to projects, anytime there's new money and there's a project that's not on the list, it wants to be on this and it wants to get funding. But I think what we've heard unequivocally from Shoshana and the Transportation Commission is that we worked with our planning partners on a list and we're going to stick to it. And so I think that was kind of the big key takeaway, albeit a little bit long-winded, that I wanted to share with you guys.
Okay, so we'll just get started with questions right away. I see some up here. I'm going to start with the first question. I noticed this is the 2045 transportation plan, but I see nothing in here that goes beyond 10 years. And I guess I'm just curious as to why, even if there's no funding, we don't think there's going to be funding, why we don't have that next, that full 25 years kind of planned out for what could potentially be future projects. So that as we're doing things now, we're doing them with the hope that 25 years down the road, we can implement them. It seems to be an oxymoron to have a 2045 plan that only goes out 15 years. So.
Yep. Marissa, do you want to take that one, or you want me to handle that one?
It's up to you. I'm happy to cover it, or if you want to speak to it.
Nope, why don't you get into it, and I'll add.
So we did, we started with the direction that, we do cover a 2045 horizon, but the focal piece, in starting this plan was, people, that's so far away and so big that it really couldn't talk about the here and now and what we needed to accomplish. So yes, we did want to identify projects that really focused on 10 years because that was more tangible and realistic. But we did think beyond those 10 years, and we did this in a variety of ways. And we worked, with each of the transportation planning regions around the state. So for example, I see some people from the Eastern TPR, I think, are on this call. And we had them look at all of their corridors and come up with visions on their corridors, which included projects. And those are all included in the statewide plan in the corridor profiles appendix. So as projects move through our 10-year pipeline, and in years 5 through 10 projects become the 1 through 4 year projects, we have we can start pulling projects from those corridor profiles and putting them into the pipeline based on what we were told are the priorities. Of course, we update our plan too, like I said, every 5 years, so we can always amend the plan as needed once we have funding that's moving the pipeline forward. Tim, do you want to add to that?
I think for context, the only other thing I would add is that, historically, our statewide plan hasn't been a project-based plan. I think we've focused in on corridors where we'd like to focus on investment, and then we kind of have that project vision, at the local TPR or MPO level. And so, this 10-year strategic pipeline of projects, in context with the statewide plan, is a new development. And I would say, Kathy, if that's something that you guys are thinking like, it really doesn't make sense. Why did we stop at at the first 10 years? We should have gone farther. I think that's great feedback, and it's something that we'll use to plant seeds for future plans. Because if there's a strategic or tactical reason for why we would want to do that, I think we would absolutely be willing to entertain that. So, I consider that really good feedback, and it's something we can consider for future plans.
Okay, I will go on to the next question, and I will preface it with, this question is not from me, because I sit on the board of directors of this group, so I try to keep my two hats separate. But this question is, has CDOT worked with or added input to the Ports to Plains Interstate Highway Initiative in the Eastern Plains area?
So yes, we I think have a lot of input, for Ports to Plains, a variety of ways. And, first I'll mention that we engaged heavily with our Freight Advisory Committee at CDOT, which includes Joe Kiley as one of the members. So lots of input there. And then also engaged heavily, as I mentioned before, with all our transportation planning regions, which includes the Eastern TPR, and heard a lot from the Eastern TPR members, the story of Ports to Plains and how important that is in terms of freight and serving statewide needs. So, for example, the pipeline includes funding on the Ports to Plains corridor, passing lanes at US 40, 287. I think it's partial funding, but it does include some funding. Pipeline also includes some truck parking top priorities that were identified from the Eastern TPR and the FAC. And I hope that the plan, it really does a good job in communicating, the project priorities, such as passing lanes on 287 Ports to Plains, as well as improvements, on, the Heartland Expressway, State Highway 71, and the US 385 freight corridor. Tim, do you want to add anything?
No, that was perfect. Good job.
Okay.
Okay, other questions from the group? Let's just talk about overall funding, where we're at. I know that they're working very heavily, different groups are at the federal level to hopefully get an infrastructure bill through. My guess is no matter how hard they work, it's not going to happen this year unless it happens right after the election. What do you see as our funding issues down the road that particularly are brought on because of COVID-19?
Yeah, so Marissa, I can take that one. So Kathy, I think the picture that we're looking at right now is obviously we've seen pretty significant reductions in VMT, which drives kind of our base program through the HUTF. I think Jeff Sidmeyer, the CFO, as well as Shoshana, Herman, Rebecca, all the top executives, they're looking to secure the base program, right? So how do we make sure that the impacts are not so severe that we have to reduce some of our asset management investments and things like that? And so far, we're confident that we can keep our base program whole, right? And so that base program is kind of all of the core functions of the department. Now, when we're talking things like 267, those are things like your passing lanes, your shoulder improvements, intersection improvements, et cetera. We were, I think, a little bit pessimistic going into session that we would lose years 3 and 4 of 267. Luckily, the state legislature still kept that door open for us. So there is still a chance that we could get some state funding through 267 through years 3 and 4. We'll have to see how that conversation goes during the next session. On the federal level, Kathy, I tend to agree with you. The closer we get to an election, the less likely it is we're going to see any type of infrastructure package go through. And then it's well, how quickly after that would we look at it? And I think the way I look at it is, we're ready to go. Right. So of the 267, and this is an important point, of the 267 funds that we still have available to us, we've set aside $45 million to do pre-construction activities. That's things like right-of-way acquisition, design, all those good pre-con activities. So if a federal stimulus bill passes, or the state legislature decides to invest precious state dollars in the system, that we're ready to go. We've got a list. We developed a list with you guys, and we can take action as quickly as we need to. And so I think that's where I kind of make my peace with it. It's because trying to predict what's going to happen, at the legislative levels, whether it's state or national, is a really difficult thing to do, and it feels like it changes every single day. But I think the key takeaways are, if we do get those dollars, we're ready for it. And in the meantime, we're making sure that CDOT can still deliver its base program. Okay.
I was talking to the city manager in Fort Morgan the other day, and the one thing COVID has not affected was our sales tax revenue, because we now have a piece of all online sales like Amazon and all of those. But I'm sitting here with the same tank of gas I had on March 13th. So, and a battery that I've got to remember to go out every day and start my car, because it doesn't like just sitting there. But so I know that the gas tax, the miles, or the money we get from that, has got to have dropped tremendously here in the state of Colorado, though I do see it starting to pick up now. Okay, any last thoughts, either Marissa, Tim, anybody else on the line? We've been very pleased with the emphasis on rural Colorado. We will continue to keep pushing you. That's what we are here for. But always in a cooperative and partnership manner. And we have really appreciated how you have reached out to us over the last couple of years. So final thoughts, Marissa?
I think I included, or I can send you an email to send out the website link where you can find all the statewide plan and all the materials. We do plan to bring the plan to our Transportation Commission for adoption at their meeting this month. But you know, this is a living plan, a living document, so we always appreciate the feedback from this group and groups like Pro 15. So please keep in touch, and looking forward to hearing more from you guys.
Tim?
Yes, ma'am. Just once again, you know, thank you to all of Pro 15. You know, I know I really value our friendship and relationship. I know Shoshana, Rebecca, Marissa, and I, we all feel the same way. You know, I'm bummed that I don't get a chance to come out and see my friends in Fort Morgan and have good conversations with you guys, because I think the one thing I've always really appreciated about you is you're direct and candid and honest. And I think that's the best way to have conversations. And so I feel like, I hope we learned a lot from each other through the conversations, and we will continue to do so in the future. So I can't wait until the cloud of COVID passes so we can all get together again.
You know, I'm really not minding it too bad. I did venture out and went into a real restaurant the other day to have a lunch. That was my first one, and I survived. I'm not my 10-day, you know, period yet, but it's a whole different world, and I don't see it changing for a little while. So thank you both, Marissa and Tim, for being with us today. For all of the rest of you that joined the call, thank you very much. We hope you enjoy these little quick 30-minute webinars to catch up on what's going on. And all of you have an absolutely awesome weekend, and stay cool. We'll talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.